Coral reefs cover a little less than 1% of the ocean's benthic regions, yet account for over 25% of all marine catch, including fishes and invertebrates, and of course, with respect to annual income to the U.S., they can bring in anywhere from $500 billion annually. But coral reefs, there are actually three main types. A fourth exists as well, but they are defined from they are kingdom Cnidaria, corals, that includes corals, sea anemones, jellies, but corals themselves form a mutualistic relationship with protists called dinoflagellates. So it's a symbiotic relationship, symbiotic mutualism, where two different species benefit from each other and are not harmed from each other. So coral reefs, you have what is called a fringing reef, which notice lies very close to the shore. You have another type, barrier reef, which actually lies further away from the shore. You may have to take a short boat ride all the way out. And then you have atolls, which are pretty much like submerged reefs, usually above submerged islands or even volcanoes. A fourth type, patch reefs. You can find very patchy areas with reef outcrops. Coral reefs, of course, they depend on sunlight because their dinoflagellates are photosynthetic algae, which depends on sunlight. The most famous coral reef is actually barrier reef, the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, which you can actually see from outer space. Very high biodiversity on reefs, not only with vertebrates but also invertebrates. So vertebrates, high in fishes, and of course invertebrates, so many different types of invertebrates. Human activities, of course, if you think of global climate change, heating of the ocean water for extensive periods, this causes coral bleaching, which the coral animal itself, there is a release of the dinoflagellate protists, thus causing the coral to have this bleach white type coloration. And to some extent, ocean acidification or steady small rise in the acidity of the oceans, to name a few. You do have other aquatic zones such as seagrass beds that do support algae and animals. Of course, we know more about kelp forests, kelp beds, which things like sea urchins, mussels, things of that nature. It's a brown algae. And then pelagic zone, where you do find different organisms. This is where your fishes, things like sharks, cartilaginous fishes, you find them. There is nekton, or swimming organisms with the ocean currents. They may be following zooplankton, which feed on phytoplankton as well. And this is what they look like. But some of the most famous organisms, your sea turtles, sharks, they do follow these as well. Sargassum seaweed, of course, brings in a different type of marine ecosystem. We are now finding out more about deep pelagic zones with the different types of organisms we find there. Most of these organisms